Thank you, and I'll yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, Chairman General Calvert.
That's right.
Thanks to the witnesses for being here.
Yes, okay, Private. Go ahead.
The clock's still moving, Miss.
Representative Pete Aguilar stunned Pete Hegseth with one question.
Mr. Secretary, I want to express my severe concern with the deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles without consultation of the state of California. There have been photographs that have shown these troops sleeping on the floor and have not been provided fuel, food, or water by DOD. How long will this deployment last, and why were we unprepared to provide them basic necessities such as food and water?
The commanders and troops on the field are very well prepared, sir. They responded incredibly rapidly to a deteriorating situation with equipment and capabilities. We have made sure from the top down, as a Secretary of Defense who's been in a unit holding riot shields outside the White House during the chaos of the summer of 2020. I know what it's like to be immediately deployed into a situation like that. There are moments where you make do as best you can temporarily, but we are ensuring they're housed, fed, water capabilities in real time from my office, because I care that much about the California Guard and the Marines and the men and women who are supporting our ICE agents on the ground.
You should check
it's
with your
true
office.
Every day, and that's a disingenuous attack that misrepresents how much we care about our troops and what they're doing to defend ICE agents. I'm not going to take the fact that we don't care about the troops. Nobody cares more about the troops at the top than this Secretary and the Chairman and our
department. How long will the deployment last?
We stated very publicly that it's 60 days. Because we want to ensure that those rioters, looters, and thugs on the other side assaulting our police officers know that we're not going anywhere. We're here to maintain the peace on behalf of law enforcement officers in Los Angeles, which Gavin Newsom won't do.
What is the estimated cost of the deployment for the Guard and the Marines to L.A., and where's this funding coming from? Will it be coming from quality of life programs that affect our service members or our families? If you want to wait till I finish.
Before I hand it to
such as updates, housing and barracks.
Before I hand it to Bryn, the insinuation that we're pulling money from housing and barracks in order to fund this is disingenuous and incorrect.
I'm just asking.
Bryn can give you the numbers. Absolutely.
So the current estimated cost is $134 million, which is largely just TDY costs, travel, housing, food, etc.
Where's it coming from? That's the cost, but where's it coming from?
Out of their O&M accounts.
With the most recent deployment of the Marines, Mr. Secretary, what's the justification for using the military for civilian law enforcement purposes in L.A.? Why are you sending war fighters to cities to interact with civilians?
Every American citizen deserves to live in a community that's safe, and ICE agents need to be able to do their job. They're being attacked for doing their job, which is deporting illegal criminals. That should happen in any city, Minneapolis or Los Angeles. And if they're attacked, that's lawless, and President Trump believes in law and order. So he has every authority, and he has done mobilizing National Guard or active duty troops under U.S. code to protect federal agents in their job, which is exactly what we're doing, and we're proud to do it. We're proud to do it.
10 U.S.C. of the U.S. Code 12406 as a legal basis that the President used cites 3 examples and circumstances for the Guard: invasion by a foreign nation, rebellion or dangerous rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the President is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Which authority is triggered here to justify the use?
I don't know. You just read it yourself, and people can listen themselves, but it sounds like all 3 to me. If you've got millions of illegals and you don't know where they're coming from, they're waving flags from foreign countries and assaulting police officers and law enforcement officers, that's the problem.
The laws of the United States?
No, the governor of California is unable to execute the laws of the United States.
The President, you said all
the governor of the California has failed to protect his people, along with the mayor of Los Angeles, and so President Trump has said he will protect our agents, and our Guard and Marines are proud to do it.
The law also says, Mr. Secretary, that the orders for these purposes shall be issued through governors of the states.
You and I both know that President Trump has all the authorities necessary, and thankfully he's willing to do it on behalf of the citizens of Los Angeles, on behalf of our ICE agents, and behalf of our country.
We've also pulled $1 billion for the border as well. So this just goes into the same fund, 134. What did
Congressman, what's the
134 million? I was asking Ms. McDonald.
Okay.
134 million goes on top of the billion that's been pulled for the
So
board?
the funding that was pulled for this year was largely in FSRM, and in this budget, we're actually looking to plus that funding back up to backfill that for our troops and for their families.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What struck me immediately about this exchange wasn't just the policy disagreement, it was the posture. Representative Pete Aguilar came in with very straightforward, very basic questions, not ideological questions, not rhetorical ones. Simple oversight questions. Why were troops deployed without state consultation? Why were Guard members sleeping on floors without adequate food and water? How long will they be there? How much will this cost? And under what legal authority are Marines being used in civilian cities? These are questions Congress is supposed to ask. This is literally how civilian control of the military is supposed to function. And yet, what did we get in response? Deflection, emotional chest thumping, and a whole lot of how dare you question me. Hegseth immediately reframes Aguilar's concern about troop welfare as a disingenuous attack. Think about that for a second. A member of Congress asks why deployed troops didn't have food, water, or beds, and the Secretary of Defense responds by accusing him of insulting the military. That's not leadership. That's political theater. And it's a pattern. Instead of acknowledging logistical failures, which absolutely do happen in rushed deployments, Hegseth launches into a personal anecdote about holding riot shields in 2020, as if that somehow answers why soldiers were photographed sleeping on floors. Experience doesn't excuse negligence, and it definitely doesn't replace accountability. Then comes the rhetoric shift. Suddenly, this isn't about troop readiness or federalism, it's about rioters, looters, and thugs. Language carefully chosen to justify anything that comes next. Once you label civilians as enemies, everything becomes permissible. 60-day deployments, Marines in American cities, ICE enforcement backed by warfighters, all wrapped in the language of patriotism. And notice how quickly California's elected leadership is blamed. Gavin Newsom and the mayor of Los Angeles are portrayed as incapable of governing, therefore justifying federal override. This is not a minor claim. This is a direct argument that the federal government should sideline state authority whenever it politically disagrees with state leadership. That's dangerous, full stop. Then we get to the cost. $134 million. Aguilar asks, again reasonably, where the money is coming from and whether it impacts service members' quality of life. Housing, barracks, family programs, the response, more indignation, more accusations of bad faith, no transparency, just vibes and assurances. And finally, the most chilling part of the exchange, the legal justification. Aguilar calmly reads the statute, 10 U.S.C. section 12,406, which lays out very specific conditions under which the National Guard can be federalized: invasion, rebellion, or inability to execute federal law with regular forces. He asks which one applies. Hegseth's answer sounds like all three to me. All three. Let that sink in. Peaceful protests and civil unrest, however chaotic, are now being rhetorically elevated to the level of invasion and rebellion. Immigrants waving foreign flags are framed as existential threats, and a governor's policy disagreement becomes failure to execute the laws of the United States. That's not legal reasoning. That's authoritarian justification dressed up as national security. And when Aguilar points out that the law requires orders to be issued through governors, Hegseth essentially shrugs and says the president has the authority and is thankfully willing to use it. That word, thankfully, is doing a lot of work here. It assumes that unilateral executive action against states is inherently good, so long as it aligns with this administration's priorities. That's not how constitutional governance works, or at least, it's not how it's supposed to. This exchange matters far beyond Los Angeles, far beyond California, and far beyond this one hearing. What we are watching unfold is a slow but deliberate normalization of military force in civilian life, not in response to invasion, not in response to rebellion, but in response to political disagreement and social unrest. That line, once crossed, does not easily uncross itself. The administration keeps insisting this is about protecting ICE agents, about public safety, about law and order. But notice how every safeguard is treated as an inconvenience. State consultation, optional, congressional oversight, disingenuous, legal constraints, interpretable, civilian-military separation, flexible. That should worry everyone, left, right, and center. Because once you accept the idea that a president can deploy troops into cities without state approval, redefine protest as rebellion, and dismiss Congress's questions as attacks, you've effectively rewritten the rules of democratic accountability. And those new rules don't depend on who's in office. They're available to whoever comes next. What Aguilar did here wasn't radical. It wasn't partisan. It was the bare minimum of constitutional responsibility. He asked, who authorized this? Under what law? At what cost? For how long? Those questions were met not with clarity but with hostility. And that tells us something important. It tells us this administration doesn't want oversight, it wants obedience. It doesn't want debate, it wants deference. And it doesn't want guardrails, it wants applause. The irony is that the same leaders who claim to defend the Constitution are openly comfortable bending it when it gets in the way. They wrap themselves in the imagery of soldiers and flags, while eroding the civilian institutions those symbols are meant to protect. If you care about the troops, you should care about how and why they're deployed. If you care about public safety, you should care about escalation. If you care about democracy, you should care about limits on power. Because when military force becomes a political tool instead of a last resort, history tells us exactly where that road leads, and it's not somewhere any free society should want to go. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments.